Adam here from the Walzer Automotive Group, and what I want to do today is take you on a test drive. So next to me here, I have a 2026 Kia K5. We'll look at the interior, exterior, some of the trim level specifics, then go for a spin around, see what it's like out on the road. Okay, so now we're behind the wheel of the 2026 Kia K5, and this is the GT line with the all-wheel drive. So there's about 5 different trim levels, depending on if you're looking at the standard front-wheel drive or optioning in the all-wheel drive. Obviously, you can tell we're up here in the Midwest. We're getting quite a bit of snow over the last couple days, so having the all-wheel drive is a pretty awesome option to add to these vehicles. Now, before we get too much into the weeds, we'll cover some of the equipment in this model, some of the optional stuff, but for now, let's put it in drive. We'll go for a spin around. Now let's begin with what powers the Kia K5 models. So there's a 191 horsepower, that's a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, and then you can go up to the turbo model. So that's the one we have here today. Same 2.5, but this one gets a dual clutch 8-speed automatic versus just kind of the standard 8-speed. It's pretty cool. This one, giving it 100 more horsepower is a pretty big jump, yet you're not sacrificing a ton on fuel economy. Yes, it goes from about 37 mpg on the highway down to about 33, but it's so much fun. Adding that extra 100 horsepower, if you can stomach losing a few mpgs off the top, I even really kind of noticed that I've driven these before and you don't really sacrifice a ton. If you can keep your foot out of the turbo, they are so much fun to drive and it really does make a difference. So obviously I would recommend popping for the turbo. Now, as we merge out onto the road here, kind of put our foot down, there's a lot of slush on the road. We've gotten about an inch of snow already this morning. So like I said, having that all-wheel drive is pretty awesome. Now in our digital infotainment screen here, you can actually see the power distribution. So it will show you where that power is going. Like I said, it's going to try and help you get the best possible fuel economy, but it is sort of an intelligent all-wheel drive system. So if it starts to sense some of that slipping, it can send some of that power from the front to the rear. It kind of balances it out, and it's a pretty awesome driving experience. Now I've owned a few German sedans in the past, and this gives me a lot of that similarity to it. Kind of the feel behind the wheel with the steering, with that all-wheel drive. They've really done a great job of making this a luxury vehicle at not really a luxury price point. Yet on the outside, the GT line is super cool looking. At the front of the vehicle, you'll notice a few differences between the grille. Those kind of orange daytime running lights in the vehicle just give it a really distinct and pretty sharp look. Then this one also rides on the blacked out 18-inch wheels, and this is the wolf gray color. I know it's hard to tell because it is so snowy today, but when the sunlight pops out and hits this color, it is so cool. It's just kind of a good look, and it shows some of the lines off really well of the vehicle. And I think, like I said, Kia's done a great job with their design language as of late, and you still see a lot of similarities between the Kia lineup with some of the equipment and the technology and some of their overall styling that just works so well. Now in the GT line, obviously behind the wheels where you're going to want to be, but if you're using this as a day-to-day vehicle, maybe you're coming out of a crossover SUV, want a little bit better fuel economy or don't need all the space, this one still gets a surprising amount of trunk room. I left some of the stuff in the back so you can kind of keep those floor mats back there. You can see just how big the trunk was. If you're going away for a long weekend, this isn't like a sports car, yet it gives you kind of some sports car vibe and feel to it. Yeah, you're not sacrificing like that huge fuel economy hit or losing a lot of trunk space. You can even pull the little handle in the back to kick the seats down, and that gives you a 60-40 split in the rear. So if you ended up with a larger object, weren't expecting something, you can make a little bit more space, but you could easily do a grocery store or Costco run and have plenty of room in the trunk of the vehicle. And then as well, like I said, if you needed to, you can knock the seats down. But there is a smaller K4 in the lineup, but the K5 just gives a little bit more comfort and a little bit more rear legroom to this vehicle. That's one thing. If you've got the kiddos, maybe they're still in the car seats or they're a little bit younger, they do get a little bit more space out of the sedan. It's kind of the perfect amount of size and space back there. Where I sit at 6'1", I actually had to slide the seat up quite a bit just to get comfortable to where I want to be. But the nice thing is that then provides plenty of legroom in the back. And one other thing that's kind of cool, you even do get a little bit of plastic around the backing of the seats. So if the little kiddos are kicking away back there, there is a little pocket that will help, but they won't be ruining the backs of the seats as well. Now into the driver's seat. So the ride and drive, like I said, it's even almost getting worse the more time I've been driving around this morning. But this thing really gives you a lot of sure-footedness and confidence, and I don't even have snow tires on this vehicle. If you put a set of awesome like BlizzX on here, this thing would be a monster in tackling the snow. Yes, it's very low to the ground, but even some of those big chunks, it just kind of skips over the top. It's not really fazed by any of the slush or high piles that are in the road. It really kind of bites in, and like I said, the turn in on on the vehicle, kind of reminiscent of those German luxury SUVs. I assume at some point, some of the designers at Kia had a little bit of look at what kind of really makes a great sedan, and they've kind of nailed a lot of good stuff in here. Then these seats, the red leather in the vehicle, I was very unexpected when you hopped in the first time. It looks cool. And again, kind of one of those things that you'd expect out of a high-line luxury vehicle, but getting red leather in here, and then not only that, but some of the red accents in the vehicle as well. Things like on the door cards, there's red, even the center console is gonna be red, and this is very large, so you can store plenty of stuff in here, and there's convenient little cubbies located around the vehicle. It all just works together really nicely. Then on the GT all-wheel drive, we've also got heated seats here. So there's a cool little knob you can kind of flip that gives you a satisfying click. And then we also get a leather-wrapped heated steering wheel with the flat bottom. And you also get the GT line kind of in the bottom of the steering wheel here. So it does look really cool and sporty. Having a heated steering wheel, if that's something you haven't had in the past, is such a game changer for days like today. When it's less than 20 degrees outside and your hands are nice and warm, that is pretty awesome. Then this one also pairs with a remote start standard on the K5. So you can actually click, fire the vehicle up. Even before I got started today, it was starting to melt all the snow off. It was nice and toasty in here. That is such a great feature. Obviously, we're deep into winter now, and just knowing that you've got the confidence of having something comfortable every day when you get behind the wheel and you get that bite and traction that you'd expect out of, even like I said, a big crossover or luxury SUV, this is giving you a lot of great stuff. And like at the price point I said, I think this is a pretty amazing deal. Now, MSRP on this one, which is pretty loaded up, is gonna be around $34,000. So if we're looking at the average new car price out right now at over $50,000, coming almost $20,000 back of that and giving you all this great technology, equipment, the all-wheel drive, and just the style of the vehicle, it makes it seem like a pretty great deal. Not to mention Kia offers a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. That means you're on the road for a decade, and all you're doing is keeping up with your scheduled maintenance, and they're pretty confident that these little motors are gonna last for quite a long time. Now, just a few other things inside here. We do have our 12.3-inch wireless Apple CarPlay as well as wireless Android Auto in our infotainment screen. It is such a responsive, easy-to-use system. Google, text messaging, everything is built into here. I had my Spotify going earlier, and I believe this is the 12-speaker Bose sound system. It makes such a big difference. I think going over the standard model, if you're an audiophile, you're listening to your podcasts or your music, that is a pretty sweet deal. And the speakers look really cool in the doors. It's just got a good design to it. That's something Kia's really done so well over the past few years. Their design on everything is just awesome. It just seems like such a value-based proposition when you're looking at maybe the Camry or the Accord, or even thinking about getting into an Audi A4 or a smaller BMW. There's a lot of choices still for sedans, and you know, this one's giving you such a great warranty and the fuel economy. Like I said, 294 horsepower. When you put your foot down, this thing just spools up and moves. That 8-speed with the dual clutch is so good in here. Not that there's anything wrong with just the standard 8-speed automatic, but you do notice if you drive these back to back just how quick the shifts are in this vehicle. And you can even kick it over and manually change to the gears if you want to have a little bit of fun. But I like the dual dash in here. Even the treatment on the dash is really cool. Then we also get like a touch sensitive screen here just below the infotainment. That's gonna be your climate control. But then when you push, you can actually flip it over to have other buttons that are gonna do your map or your home button. And then you can just click it again and it goes back to your dual zone climate control. Then there's also a few other buttons down here for your drive mode select. So you can put it into a SMO or sport mode if you want, just to kind of fine tune your driving style. And then also the backup camera button. So if you're going slow or parked, you can click that. It pulls up the backup camera. It does have full 360 sensors around the vehicle. The camera, you can see the sensors, or you can even do the full screen in here. There's just a lot of really cool stuff. Like I said, for this price point at $34,000, even some of the more base crossover SUVs are going to be a little bit more than that. And something that's got all-wheel drive, gets great fuel economy, even with the turbocharged engine. I think if you're in the market, like I said, Camry, Accord, or if you're looking at even some of the crossover SUVs, I think the Kia K5 is absolutely one to add to the list. Come out, take for a spin, and see what you think. Now that was just a quick look and drive at the 2026 Kia K5. Now if you have any other questions or you'd like to schedule a test drive, you can visit us online at walser.com or stop by anytime. We'd be more than happy to help. Thanks again for watching.